J.R.R. Tolkien's fantasy novel, The Lord of the Rings, there's a character named Gollum who lived for centuries in a cave deep within the goblin town of the Misty Mountains. This cave, dark and deep, had winding tunnels like a labyrinth and contained a large lake that even nearby goblins dared not approach. Interestingly, there's a real-life Gollum's cave in the United States. It's located in an unnamed cave at the deepest part of Y Mountain in Provo, Utah. The cave is filled with water year-round, and at its highest levels it can be quite treacherous, resembling a small lake. Because this scene is so reminiscent of the description in The Lord of the Rings, cavers have aptly named it Gollum's Cave. At the foot of Y Mountain, where Gollum's Cave is located, there's a small town with a university. Over 100 years ago, Brigham Young University built a large white symbol on the mountainside, measuring 116 meters long and 40 meters wide, which is how Y Mountain got its name. To reach Gollum's Cave, you first have to enter another unnamed cave. The entrance to this cave is on the slope of Y Mountain and is narrow and long, often hidden by shrubs and weeds. This unnamed cave isn't natural. It was mined many years ago for its rich mineral veins. The entrance was too small, allowing only one adult to pass through at a time, making it difficult to transport the ore. Consequently, the site was abandoned. Today, traces of the mining operations can still be found near the entrance. Later, cavers discovered another hidden cave within this unnamed cave. According to their descriptions, the structure inside is simple, with only one entrance and exit, and a depth of about 30 meters. The main tunnel contains cold standing water, and after about 10 meters you reach a fork. The eastern tunnel has ordinary rock walls and isn't particularly interesting. The western tunnel, however, is worth exploring. It's a 15-meter-long damp path that ends in a 0.6-meter diameter pool. Gollum's Cave is located on the other side of this pool. To cross the pool, you must dive through a 4.5-meter-long underwater tunnel, emerging into a hidden space with a conical ceiling. This is the highest point of Gollum's Cave. The cave is submerged in water up to 2 meters deep, like a lake, and at its highest, the water can reach chest level. However, the space is spacious enough to accommodate 6 to 8 people. The first cavers also discovered a lot of sediment in the underwater tunnel. When people swim through the cave, they inevitably stir up sediment, making it difficult to see the direction. To ensure the safety of future explorers, a guide rope was installed in the tunnel, with one end tied to a rock at the entrance and the other to a rock inside Gollum's Cave. This guide rope allows cavers to follow it to advance or retreat without getting lost. For seasoned cavers, navigating the Nameless Cave and reaching Gollum's Cave isn't particularly challenging, which is why it remains relatively unknown in the professional caving community. Its location isn't marked on maps and is instead shared through word of mouth among local amateur adventurers. The cave's straightforward structure, spacious interior, and the underwater guide rope mean that no specialized equipment is necessary. Just a few flashlights will do. This makes it a popular spot among local hobbyists, including our protagonist, Jennifer. At 21, Jennifer is a guitarist in the Parallax rock band. An avid adventurer, she had previously explored the Nameless Cave with friends, but hadn't made it to Gollum's Cave. One evening in 2005, after a performance at a cafe in Provo, Jennifer brought up Gollum's Cave to her friends on a whim. The idea immediately piqued their interest, and the 5 of them, including Jennifer, decided to explore the cave. It was Wednesday, August 17, 2005. That night, a cafe at the foot of Y Mountain in Provo, Utah, was hosting a performance. The performers were Parallax, a rock band made up of university students. On stage that night were 21-year-old Jennifer, 24-year-old Blake, 28-year-old Scott, and 18-year-old Ariel. Jennifer, from American Fork, Utah, was studying philosophy at Utah Valley State College. Bright and talented, she was well regarded by her professors and had just completed her first year of studies. The youngest in her family, Jennifer had 2 older sisters and an older brother. Outgoing and enthusiastic, she had a background in modeling and photography. Her interests spanned music, photography, and adventure, and she played bass guitar in the band. Blake, Jennifer's boyfriend and one of the band's founders, was 3 years older than her. They both attended the same school. Blake, an only child, lived with his mother after his parents divorced. Blake's mother and Jennifer's mother were colleagues and treated each other like family. Blake was a multi-talented artist, skilled in writing, drawing, and music. Scott, a local from Provo, was also a classmate of Jennifer and Blake, studying behavioral science at the same university. The youngest member of the group, Ariel, from Orem, was a prodigy who had graduated early from Orem High School a year ago before joining Parallax. Ariel loved singing, dancing, and hiking, and quickly bonded with Jennifer. The four band members were united by their love of music and often went on outings together, forming a close-knit group. In recent years, Parallax had been active in various bars and cafes around Provo. That night, the band was once again invited to perform at a cafe. The four members were ready and about to take the stage. Among the audience were two old friends who had come to show their support after hearing about the performance. One of them was Joseph, a 26-year-old musician from Nevada, who had previously been in a band with some members of Parallax. Although the band had since disbanded, he still kept in touch with his former bandmates. The other friend was Steve, 21, who shared Jennifer's love for adventure and challenges and had extensive experience in exploration. That evening, the cafe performance started on time. With each energetic rock song, the atmosphere quickly heated up. The audience, immersed in the music, couldn't help but move to the rhythm and tap along to the beats. The music attracted more and more people into the cafe, who ordered drinks and settled in to enjoy the show. The seats gradually filled up, and the band members became more engrossed in their performance. When the final song ended, the crowd erupted in enthusiastic applause and cheers, with some even shouting for an encore. Jennifer and her bandmates waved to the audience and stepped off the stage. The performance was a great success. After the show, the group invited Joseph and Steve to join them at a nearby restaurant for a bite to eat. The lively atmosphere from the performance carried over to the dinner table, where the six of them raised their glasses to celebrate the show's success. As they chatted about various topics, Jennifer suddenly began sharing her adventure stories with great enthusiasm. Her tales quickly captivated everyone, causing them to put down their drinks and listen intently. Seeing she had everyone's attention, Jennifer asked if anyone had heard of the nearby Gollum's cave. Someone immediately responded, "Isn't that from the Lord of the Rings?" Jennifer shook her head with a mischievous smile and said, "There's actually a place called Gollum's Cave, and it's not far from here." Hearing this, Steve, one of the group, smiled knowingly because he had been there before. The rest of the group, intrigued, pressed for more details about this Gollum's Cave. Jennifer and Steve exchanged a glance, and Steve took a sip from his cup before explaining that the real Gollum's Cave was located on nearby Y Mountain. He described an unnamed cave with a path leading to a pool of icy water. By diving through this pool and holding one's breath, one could reach Gollum's Cave. The entrance to the unnamed cave was very well hidden. Many explorers had searched Y Mountain in vain, unfamiliar with the terrain, and only a few had managed to find it. The group showed curious expressions, and someone jokingly asked Jennifer if she was making up stories to entertain them. Jennifer laughed and shook her head, saying she had personally been inside the unnamed cave. She recounted how she and a few friends had recently gone on an expedition to Y Mountain. They had stumbled upon a narrow cave entrance on the slope and, driven by curiosity, squeezed in one by one. Inside, the cave was dimly lit, filled with water, and the passages were very low. Jennifer and her friends had to bend over to wade through the water for a short distance. As they went deeper, the water level rose to their calves. Unsure of what lay ahead, and with the cold water becoming unbearable for one of their companions, they decided to turn back for safety. However, after leaving, Jennifer couldn't stop thinking about that unnamed cave. Through various inquiries, she learned about a hidden cave deeper inside, known as Gollum's Cave. She regretted not pushing through the last time and was eager to return and reach the deepest part of Gollum's Cave. When she finished speaking, the table erupted with excitement. Some encouraged Jennifer to go find it again, while others doubted the story's authenticity, thinking it was just hearsay. During the discussion, Steve chimed in, confirming that Gollum's cave was real because he had been there himself. Steve's words shocked everyone, including Jennifer, and they all looked at him, urging him to continue. Steve enthusiastically described the cave, explaining that although the unnamed cave had some water, it wasn't deep and could be easily traversed. Initially, there was only one main passage, which eventually split into two branches deeper inside. Steve revealed that Gollum's cave was at the far end of the western branch, but reaching it was no easy feat to see the hidden marvel. One had to wade through a shallow, 15-foot-long underwater tunnel. Everyone laughed, thinking it sounded simple, but Steve cautioned them not to underestimate those few meters. He shared a near-fatal story about an explorer who stirred up sediment in the tunnel, making the water murky and causing him to lose his way and bump into the walls repeatedly. Fortunately, the explorer managed to return to Gollum's cave, catch his breath, and use the guide rope to swim out safely. Despite Steve's cautionary tale, the young group around the table felt a mix of fear and growing curiosity about Gollum's cave. Jennifer, who had previously given up halfway, was now more determined to reach the mysterious cave. She suggested they explore it that very night. The group quickly agreed, thinking it was a great idea, especially with Steve's guidance. However, it was already late. Steve checked the time and, seeing it was past midnight, remembered he had work the next day. He politely declined the invitation, opting to go home and rest. Despite this, the remaining group members were still eager to go and were determined to explore the cave that night. They borrowed 2 flashlights and some candles from the restaurant owner and set off up the mountain to find the entrance to the nameless cave. It was early morning, and the sky was pitch dark. The mountain was deserted, overgrown with weeds, and only the sounds of insects and occasional gusts of wind, reminiscent of a beast's low growl, could be heard, creating an eerie atmosphere. The sound of their footsteps echoed along the mountain path as Jennifer led the way, relying on her memory to find the cave entrance. Holding the flashlight, they chatted and laughed, occasionally bending down to push aside shrubs and weeds, careful not to miss the entrance. After hours of searching, they finally reached 3 a.m. Their persistence paid off when they discovered a dark, narrow crevice in the rock wall on the hillside. Shining their flashlights, they saw that the area was overgrown with weeds and entangled with wild vines, some of which even extended into the cave. Jennifer announced that this was the entrance to the nameless cave. Excited, everyone moved closer, pulling aside the vines to peer into the dark cave. The entrance was exceedingly damp, and the wind carrying moisture blew on their faces, sending chills down their spines. The entrance was extremely narrow, only allowing one person to pass at a time. Jennifer went first, rubbing her hands together, bending down, and carefully climbing up the rock wall to enter the cave. Inside, the cave was slightly more spacious, with a downward-sloping path and puddles of water, creating a damp environment. The cave's height was limited, forcing them to stoop slightly to stand. She called out to the others outside, ready to assist them. One by one, they helped each other enter the cave, trudging through the water slowly. The cave was darker than the night outside, and they could only see the path ahead by the faint light of their flashlights. As they ventured deeper, the passage became increasingly lower and narrower. Eventually, they had to crawl on their stomachs to move forward. The ground was wet, soaking their clothes and causing discomfort. After an indeterminate distance, they reached a shallow water area, about knee-deep. Jennifer recognized this place from before. She tested the water and confirmed it wasn't deep, just as Steve had described. She relayed this information to her companions and led the way into the water. Even in midsummer, the water was extremely cold. As they crawled, the water gradually covered half of Jennifer's body, making her shiver. The rest of the group followed Jennifer into the water, undeterred by the discomfort. Their curiosity about the unknown pushed them onward, encouraging each other to reach the mysterious Gollum's cave that night. After crawling for about a dozen meters, they finally passed through the water and reached a fork in the path. Here, the cave ceiling was higher, allowing them to stand and wring out their wet clothes before continuing down the westward path. The air in the passage was even more humid, with water droplets hanging on the cave walls. After a few more meters, the group reached the end of the narrow path. Before them lay a pool about half a meter wide. A rope was securely tied to one side of the rocks, its other end disappearing into the pool, leading to an unknown destination. This must be the guide rope, Jennifer thought excitedly. Crossing this waterway would lead them to Gollum's cave. Jennifer approached the rope carefully, giving it a firm tug to ensure it was stable. She then informed her companions that they needed to take a deep breath, follow the guide rope underwater, and swim. The other three were eager to proceed, but Joseph stood aside, silent and visibly uneasy. Concerned, the group asked him what was wrong. Joseph admitted that the previous crawl through water had drained most of his energy, and the thought of another underwater venture made him hesitant to continue. While the others felt a bit disappointed, they respected his decision. Joseph decided to return to the cave entrance alone, while the remaining four continued their exploration. Jennifer led by example, taking a deep breath before diving into the water and grasping the guide rope to navigate forward. Her three companions followed suit, one by one, disappearing from Joseph's sight. Joseph lingered for a moment, holding onto the rope, waiting for a signal from his friends. Joseph soon felt a tug on the rope, signaling that his companions had safely navigated the waterway. Relieved, he acknowledged their signal. It was now 4:30 a.m., and they had been in the unnamed cave for an hour and a half. The damp air made Joseph increasingly uncomfortable and breathing difficult. After confirming his friend's safety, Joseph decided to leave. After another arduous crawl, Joseph finally reached the entrance as dawn was breaking. Exhausted, he leaned against a rock, taking deep breaths of fresh air and feeling immensely relieved. Estimating that his friends would need more time to return, he found a nearby spot to rest. As time passed with no sign of his friends emerging from the cave, Joseph grew increasingly anxious. He checked his phone again. It was now 5:45 a.m. He had been waiting for 45 minutes. Remembering their dinner conversation with Steve, who had previously visited Gollum's cave, Joseph quickly called him to ask how long the cave exploration typically took. Steve, groggy from sleep, answered after several rings. Joseph's urgent tone quickly woke him up. Steve explained that beyond the waterway lay a small cave, Gollum's cave, with nothing else of note. Joseph reasoned that something must have gone wrong inside the cave, as his friends were likely on their way out when the incident occurred. His anxiety grew, swinging between panic and calmness. He quickly called several friends experienced in caving, and they all urged him to seek help immediately. Unable to sit still any longer, Joseph dialed 911 at 6:30 a.m. to report his friends missing. A professional rescue team arrived shortly thereafter, accompanied by members of the Provo police and fire departments. The police were initially surprised, as they had never heard of such a cave on Y Mountain. The rescue team spoke with Joseph to get a clear picture of the situation and determine the likely location of the four friends. Equipped with oxygen masks, a few team members crawled into the cave to explore. They reached the deepest part of the western fork of the underground waterway but found no trace of the missing individuals. The guide rope was still securely tied to the rock, but there was no response from the other end, indicating a dire situation. Unfortunately, the rescue team lacked specialized diving equipment and, uncertain of the underwater conditions, chose not to proceed with the rescue immediately. Some team members returned to the surface to report back, while others stayed behind to wait. A new rescue plan was quickly devised. They decided to use pumps to drain the water from the passage and inject oxygen into the cave beyond to prevent the trapped individuals from suffocating. Once the plan was set, they began the operation. By 9:45 a.m., the water level had dropped by 30 centimeters, revealing the face of a woman just below the surface. She was just a step away from the entrance but didn't make it. The rescuers pulled her out quickly, but it was too late. She had already lost her life. When her body was brought out of the cave, Joseph broke down in tears. Upon identification, it was confirmed that she was Jennifer, the leader of the exploration team. The cave fell silent, each rescuer wearing a somber expression. The cave was spacious enough for 2 adults to stand upright, while others had to crouch slightly. The interior was perpetually shrouded in darkness, receiving no natural light. When the rescue team turned on their searchlights, they discovered a few scattered candles on the cave walls, some of which had been lit, suggesting the victims used them for illumination. Tests revealed that the oxygen level in Gollum's cave was 19%, lower than the normal atmospheric level of 21%, even after a morning of continuous oxygen supply. As a sealed cave, the water isolated it from the outside, causing the oxygen to deplete faster as more people entered. The concentration of carbon dioxide would rise, leading to dizziness and other adverse reactions due to lack of oxygen. The burning candles further accelerated the oxygen depletion. Based on the scene, the events of that night were reconstructed. After arriving at the pool early in the morning, Joseph, out of fear, decided not to continue exploring. However, Jennifer and the other 3 persisted, determined to check out the other side of the underwater passage. They took a deep breath, turned on their flashlights, and one by one, dove into the water. The water was still relatively clear at that time. Following the light from their flashlights and holding onto the guide rope, the 4 swam towards the other end of the cave. The journey went smoothly, and they successfully reached Gollum's cave. Emerging from the water, they took in the dark surroundings with a sense of novelty. Having overcome many obstacles to get there, they didn't want to leave after just a quick glance. To see better, they lit the candles they had brought. However, their initial excitement soon gave way to discomfort. As time passed, they began to feel breathless and dizzy, realizing they couldn't stay much longer without risking danger. However, her initial passage had stirred up a lot of sediment, making the water murky. Unable to see, she panicked and lost her grip on the guide rope. She groped around in the water but couldn't find it. Relying on memory, she tried to swim forward mechanically. The cold water made her extremely uncomfortable and dizzy. The short 4 to 5 meter passage seemed interminably long. Eventually, Jennifer lost consciousness from exhaustion in the water, unable to reach the exit. In Gollum's cave, the other 3 struggled to breathe as they tried to swim back through the murky tunnel. After a few minutes, they assumed Jennifer had made it to the other side. The second person took a deep breath, grabbed the guide rope, and dove in, but faced the same issues. Having stayed in the cave for too long, she felt dizzy, and the cold water made it hard for her to move her limbs. She clung to the rope, trying to navigate in the dark, but faced an even more desperate situation. Jennifer's unconscious body blocked the passage. Unable to proceed and realizing her companion was already in trouble, fear overwhelmed her. They were all amateurs with no experience in handling emergencies. She tried to push Jennifer forward but couldn't move her at all. In the darkness and confined space of the underwater passage, it was impossible to turn around. Tragically, they all met the same fate. 4 talented young lives were lost to their curiosity. It was a tragedy no one wanted to see. Recognizing the dangers of the cave, the Provo authorities sealed the entrance with cement that same afternoon to prevent further incidents. Friends of the victims gathered at the cave entrance to mourn, leaving their handprints in the wet cement as a tribute to their friends' spirits. The disaster brought widespread attention to the previously unknown cave, which had been attracting over 5,000 visitors per year, many of whom neglected proper safety measures. Initially, adventurers flocked to Y Mountain, eager to explore Gollum's cave, only to find the entrance completely sealed, leaving them disappointed. Over time, people gradually forgot about Gollum's cave. The former entrance, now surrounded by fallen leaves and rocks, occasionally had water trickling out, giving it a desolate appearance. A black plaque with white letters stood nearby, commemorating the 4 young lives lost there. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps us going. Thank you.